Storytelling involves five main elements: the characters or the actors in the story, the setting, which is the time and place where the story happens, and the action of the story through the plot, the conflict, and the resolution. Each part helps to move the story along, and for a storyteller, spending time on each part is important to telling a great story. Artists can also be storytellers, but rather than using words and a sequence of events and descriptions, an artist must choose a single moment, including clues in their artwork to help fill in the rest of the story. When we think about plot, the action that happens in a story, we can imagine a painting showing one specific moment in time. The same can be said of characters. A character may be a person, an animal, or some other living thing that is the center of the story. In an artwork, the artist may choose a specific image of one person or a group of people that build their story, using visual details to help us imagine what the person is like and what they are doing. Let's take a close look at this fellow. We have a single character in this painting with very little other information. Spend a moment imagining what he is like based on what you see and what it would be like to meet him in real life. How would you feel? What would you say to him? Pause the video for a moment and discuss your ideas with the people around you. This painting is called Prospector Peter Swanson. It shows a large man who takes up most of the picture. His large forearms and his pose tell us that he is a strong, no-nonsense sort of guy, though I notice a bit of a twinkle in his eye and the crinkles in the corners of his eyes that suggest that he also smiles a lot. I like to think of him as a kind person too, though this is just my own imagination. Notice the way the artist has used similar colors and shapes in his clothes and skin as those in the background. She is using more subtle clues to tell us that he is an outdoorsman with connections to that landscape behind him. In a good story, the author introduces information about the main characters in a number of ways: by what they say and do, what they think, what others say about them, and through a description of their physical attributes and their character traits. An artist can do some of these things as well really easily in a painting, through showing us what the character looks like, how they dress, their facial expressions and body language, which means what they say without words by the way they position their body, as well as how they fit in with their surroundings. Many of the other characteristics can also be shown using more subtle clues: objects, colors, and backgrounds, as well as the way other characters look at them or interact with them in the artwork. For some, characters are the whole reason for a story. Without a character, we have lots of scenery and not much else. In addition to moving a story along, a character can be used to teach us something, to entertain us, or to connect with readers and viewers through shared experiences. Characters can be based on real people or events, or they can be imaginary. Some stories may have a full cast of many different characters, while others can have just one or two. Here is a painting by William Karelic, with the main character speeding past us. What kind of person do you see here? What do you learn about this man from the painting in front of you? Take a moment to share with those around you, and think about the clues that the artist has given. William Karelic is an artist who used his paintings to teach others. He made hundreds of paintings during his life, and a lot of them were used to illustrate stories. There is an aspect of storytelling in most of his work. Here we see a man driving a transport truck loaded high with lumber. He is driving down the freeway and moving fast if the splashing we see around the tires is any indication. He is driving through a storm and there is a lot of other traffic around him. He looks middle-aged, and from the expression on his face, he doesn't seem too bothered by the conditions around him. There is no destination in sight, nor a starting point for this journey. This is a long haul. With all of these details, it would be easy to build a story around this man and this moment in time. In most stories, other than those with only one character, we find a cast of common character types, each with a role to play. There are major characters, who are the most important person or role in the story. We've already talked about the main character in the previous paintings. There are minor characters too, who have smaller roles to play in the story, and the storyteller uses them to add detail to their story or to move the plot along. In every story we have a protagonist. This is the central character in the story who tries to accomplish something and who must make their way through a conflict or challenge. This is usually the character we think of as the good guy or the hero. This is the character that we cheer on through the hard times. Acting in opposition to the protagonist is the antagonist, the character who holds back the action and causes trouble. We may refer to this character as the bad guy or the villain. In another painting here by William Karelic, we see a story inspired by the artist's own childhood experiences. Based on what you see in this image, start to describe what is happening here and identify which character types we see. The child of Ukrainian immigrant parents, Karelic was used to not fitting in. He was picked on for being different and saw others having the same troubles. This particular painting shows one of Karelic's childhood friends being subjected to cruel name-calling and bullying because this boy was different than the others. Our protagonist, the boy facing us from the canvas, has been surrounded by faceless antagonists, the other children on the playground. Other common character types that we may encounter in a story are characters like the narrator, the mentor or helper, the sidekick, the love interest, the caregiver, and even the symbolic character who may represent an idea rather than just an individual person. Take a look at this painting showing several figures moving along a path in a wooded area. Whenever we have people together in a painting, there's usually some purpose for including all of them, even if they don't appear to be interacting with each other. Spend some time looking at each of the characters in the painting and imagine who each might be and what they are doing there. Look for a main character, a protagonist, and see if you can find a villain or an antagonist. What other character roles do you see filled in here? In my mind, the story unfolding in this painting is suggested by three different groups of people. First, I have chosen the child near the middle of the painting as my main character. You might have made a different choice, which means your story will go in a different direction than mine. The child I have chosen is protected by three adults. Let's call them the parents or protectors, who are standing behind her in a clump. She is standing a little bit away from them, so she doesn't blend in. That makes her stand out to me as my main character. Her back is to us and she seems to be looking further up the path. The second group that I notice is two adults near the top left of the painting. The child seems to be looking at them, and I have called them the helpers. They seem to be looking for something. Look at their positions, looking down or further along the path. They are close together but looking in opposite directions. Finally, the third group is actually a single character dressed in black and walking behind a large tree. Or is he hiding? He seems to be carrying a large something on his back, and no one seems to be looking at him. I've decided he is the antagonist in my story, since he seems a little bit sneaky to me. Now, having decided on the roles of each of the characters in this painting, I am now well prepared to create the rest of my story. In addition to the character types we've just talked about, there are other ways to describe characters in a story based on what we learn about them during the story. Characters that we are given a lot of detail about are described as round characters. We know them well and often come to care about them quite a bit. A dynamic character is someone who goes through some kind of important change. Usually this is our protagonist who has to solve a problem, learn something, or otherwise change their world. Other times the antagonist might learn something too and change their role as well. Filling out the rest of the story are a lot of necessary but less developed characters. These are our flat characters, who we don't get to know very well. They act almost like props that help the main character along through the story. Also, we find static characters who remain exactly the same throughout the whole story and fulfill a similar role. I leave you now with one more painting filled with people. Depending on who you choose to be your main character, this story could go in many different ways. Is your protagonist the young man in the French Navy uniform kissing a girl goodbye? he has a suitcase in his hand and there is a bus waiting down the road? Or is it the girl being kissed? Or someone else altogether? Look for the details that the artist has included in this painting and create a story of your own. Once we know our characters well, we are ready to build a story. Enjoy your adventure with these characters. And remember that an artist tells us a lot of information, but we can still go in a number of paths through our own storytelling.